Hello, everybody. This is Arnie Singleton, a.k.a. T-Dog from The Walking Dead, and you are listening to Dispatch Radio with my main man, Brandon.
All right, you Dispatch readers and listeners, it's time to talk politics again. Many of you have been asking a lot of questions about delegates, what's going on with the GOP, why is Bernie winning races but not getting delegates, and I thought it was best to reach out to an expert, and he's a big libertarian mover and shaker here in Florida, ran for the U.S. Senate opposite Marco Rubio in 2010. I know he knows his stuff, so we have him with us, Alex Snitker. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, Brandon. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm so blessed, and I tell you, this stuff is so complicated, brother. I tell you what, when we talked, I think it's easy to say we're both surprised sitting here now where we are. I think the consensus was Jeb Bush would be the candidate. I went out on a limb and thought Marco Rubio would be where the establishment pushed things. And reality is the establishment doesn't seem to be able to hold things together for the GOP. Speak to your surprise and where the Republican race is right now.
Yeah, no, I got to tell you, I am really surprised. But you know what? We shouldn't have been surprised. And the reason is we know the electorate was mad on both sides of the equation, but we didn't realize how mad they actually were or how willing they were to step out. And the thing that this is really doing is it is highlighting in a way that was shown in Ron Paul in the 2012 campaign, but I don't think got the same kind of media attention that it's getting now when it's Trump on one side and Sanders on the other. It's the combination that's showing that both of them have a lot of, and again, maybe corruption, I always think it's corruption, but at the same time, the way that the rules are set in place and the way that the system is set up in place is that it's highlighting that as an individual, your vote really doesn't count when it comes to how the parties select their president. And I think that most people just took it as a given that that's what happened. And it took this kind of an incident where you have one guy with a whole lot of money running in the GOP who's getting delegates, and then you watch the response from that where they were trying to throw anything they could at him. I mean, Jeb Bush spent $100 million, Rubio spent a ton of money. Those were the top two guys. And to see this happen is only highlighting, I think some real things that were never really discussed by people, but now are in full view for everyone to see.
And I think in the age of the internet and talk radio and things like that, you can really seek out a lot more information than we could before. And I tell you what, folks, I'm just amazed at how complicated this is. This has been such a life lesson for me, educating myself on delegate counts, how this actually works. And, Alex, you have Trump out there. He's now got him and his surrogates. They're using terms like Gestapo tactics, and this is being stolen from them. But that's not really the truth, right? I mean, you got to be able to understand how the rules are put together so you know how to play the game properly. And that's what Ron Paul tapped into in 2012. He was playing the game better than Romney, forced their hand. They actually had to kind of come up with Rule 40 to cheat him out of being able to be on the ballot for votes. And I think we're seeing Cruz outmaneuver Trump at this point.
Yeah, no. That is absolutely happening. And the thing is the people that say that the system is corrupt and the Gestapo tactics, I wouldn't disagree with those things. However, there's a difference between saying that they're doing something illegal and saying that they're playing the game. And Cruz is playing the game. Now, you may not like the way that the game is being played, and I would agree that I think it is disgusting, but yet it's still highlighting, problems inherent within the system. But it's still the system that they have right now, and they can change the rules whenever they want to, and that's kind of the point. The people, the establishment, the way that they've been able to continue to be in charge is that they run the rules, and they are a private, or the GOP, for all intents and purposes, is a private organization, and that private organization can set their rules for a nomination however they want. The other thing that this is highlighting is that these presidential these presidential primaries across the nation are only there to give people a sense that they actually get to pick somebody, but they don't really get to pick somebody. And you've had, prominent members within the establishment GOP. And again, this is committee men, committee women, people that run the nuts and bolts stuff, not the politicians per se, but the bureaucrats that are in the parties are basically saying it. They're going, look, they don't, the people don't really pick the delegate, the candidate. The delegates do. The delegates really pick the candidates. So, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, what they'll say is, I don't know what they're talking about where they get this pick. They've had to be upfront and honest about this, and, that's really opening a lot of eyes.
And I think we've talked a little bit about this in another show, and I know I've talked to some folks personally, that there are certain state rules. You know, a candidate can win a primary, therefore the delegates that are chosen have to be allegiant to that decision for a first vote or their second votes. But there are some states, as we saw with Colorado, we're going to see again with Pennsylvania, these are unbound delegates, right? I mean, you basically just have Jeb Bush people. I mean, it really, there's no allegiance at all to who they can vote for. Now, the committee, when they sit down for this convention, the Rules Committee will come together. They will decide on rules. Do you expect something similar to Rule 40, that they will try to restrict the number of candidates for that first ballot? They will try to do something to prevent? Or do you think because they want more of an establishment candidate, they might leave this completely wide open? I heard his name is Curly, I think it's Hoagland. Anyway, he's a North Dakota Rules Committee member, and he was basically trying to petition that any candidate that got even a single delegate should be included. So you're talking about bringing Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson and Jeb and all these people back into the mix potentially.
Yeah, no. Well, here's the thing. This is where I think they're going to fail. Because what happened is that you have two of the major candidates. You have Cruz left and you have Trump left. Is that they are going to have their people in these committees that they're talking about. And the Rule 40 is already in place. So they're going to have to get rid of the rule in order to open it up for the other candidates. And this is where both Trump and Cruz will agree that the rule should stay in place. Right. And the reason is because both of people, and I think there may be enough people on those committees that are going to be willing to keep that rule in place for another year. Even the Cruz people may say, well, down the road we can get rid of that, but this year we're going to keep it because that means that the only person we have to fight is Donald Trump, and their rationale for that is going to be that the majority of the Republican base doesn't want Trump, so we're going to go ahead and go that way because they think in the delegate count they'll win. And look what they did in Colorado. I mean, Colorado just null and voided any hint that there was even an election.
Yeah, but that's the way it is in North Dakota. I mean, obviously, if Trump doesn't have anybody that's going to show up in Louisiana and there's only Cruz people in the room, and this is exactly what we saw with Ron Paul. So, this is the system that's in place. And I kind of want to move to the Democrats because the Democrat system, it's got a similar corruption, but it's actually worse because you have a primary, so you have a situation where Bernie Sanders will win an election by 40%. But the superdelegates, the actual senators, I want to put a moratorium and no longer use terms like superdelegates and call them who they are. The party representatives, meaning your governor, your senator, your House reps, your state senators, whoever they are, the big Democrat players in your state are saying, oh, no, well, it doesn't matter what you people think. I'm going to pick Hillary anyway. And
actually, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's the chair of the DNC, has already admitted that this is what happens. Now, she did try to spin it to say, we don't want the party leaders having to compete with the grassroots. And what that means is that we want to make sure that the people that are the party leaders never get, never lose the power of being a delegate. So we're automatically going to include all of them in this process. And there's no way that you can get them out. So let's say you're a bunch of Bernie Sanders supporters and you run through the delegate process. Well, you don't get to that point. Like, you can't knock them out. You only get to play for some few spots. You don't get to play for everything. So it doesn't matter what happens in the primary because the party establishment is going to be picking the nominee, and they put these rules in place to ensure that this happens. And they will admit it, but they will try to spin it in a way of, we're trying to increase competition. We're trying to increase inclusiveness. No. They put all of their party leaders in one area, and you can't touch them.
Alex Snitker's giving us some insight. We're talking about the delegate situations, both on the Republican and the Democratic side of things. And before we leave that, I think it's only fair to spin our wheels for a few moments of the shock factor that you and I must both share. A 74-year-old socialist is beating Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Handily.
I mean, it's funny, it's scary, and it's funny all at the same time. And that, look, the problem with Bernie, not the problem with Bernie, but the thing about Bernie is this, is that when it comes to inequality within the system, when it comes to the corporations having all of this power, when it comes to it's unfair for some and all this kinds of, and all the kind of talk that he's doing, look, I can understand why people feel that way. I really can. I really can understand, because corporatism is run amok in this country. There's no getting around that. And so when Bernie Sanders talks about corporatism, I would agree with him.
I
When he
think
talks about,
we can all come together, right, on what the problems are, right? The Cruz people, the Trump people, the Sanders people, you and I with more of a libertarian bent, we can all probably agree on a good half a dozen to 20 of these major themes that we all can agree on the problems. The solution is where Bernie and I are going to part ways.
well, he's doubling down. He's refusing to admit some obvious truths to the rest of us when it comes to government, because ideologically he cannot maintain being a socialist and admit that these problems were caused by the government. So he will skew the data in order to try to make it out to where the bad guy was the capitalism. That's who the bad guy was. But the problem is that these rules that they put in place have shown that it only helps the big corporations. It's the same thing with these, like we're talking about, you talked earlier about the RNC and the rules, right? Like the rules going on, how they're so complicated, they're so convoluted, and all this other stuff. It's been done by design in many ways, and it's in order to make sure that not just some Joe guy can come in there and take it over, or that change is rough, and these guys are making it so it's almost impossible to change the establishment because of this. So. But that's only a symptom of having force, of government, of not having voluntary association, of being able to be exclusionary on this stuff. Like, it's the problem that Sanders, in my opinion, is the problem that Sanders has is he doesn't understand he's on the wrong side. Like, he doesn't understand that these corporations will have control anyway, and you have to get rid of those things and allow the free market to bloom. It's the free market of ideas. I would agree with him, and this is going to sound a little weird coming from a libertarian, but I agree with him that we need to have more democracy in this country. I love that we can have more democracy in this country. Where I differ from him is that I view democracy as all of us as individuals making voluntary decisions, and that those decisions are what democracy actually looks like. It doesn't have force. It doesn't have fraud. It's us making our own decisions. If we think that the poor should get more money or the poor need more help, then we voluntarily give our money to go and help the poor. Is that if a business wants to succeed, that they have to do it on their own merits, that we can't vote them more money either.
See,
and don't get wrong. Go ahead.
That's charity and your freedom to do that. Bernie doesn't want an ounce of that. He wants to make sure that the government does that. You can't choose to do that. Let me give you a better example that my son brought to our attention was that the college campuses are running amok with Sanders' demagoguery, and he was all into this, what if it was only $1, Dad, to support people to have this maternity leave, this paid maternity leave? I said, son, why is it $1? Why not $100? What? I said, $100. I think $100 is a better price, right? Well, no, I can't afford $100. Well, how do you know I can afford $1? Why is $1 okay and $100 not okay? Because not everybody can afford that. Well, who gets to decide that? Okay, so the problem is Bernie doesn't even understand. The scary part with Bernie is, and the thing that's respectable about Bernie is, he's been a socialist his entire career. It's not like he's evolved into this or whatever. Even when he was just a simple mayor, he was out spouting the exact same talking points. We could run the same clips and that kind of thing. The scary part is how many students and the naivete of the next generation have bought into this, and not what you just said. You laid out exactly the situation of saying, listen, if the poor need money, fine, we need to come together as a community and make sure that we're being charitable and take care of our poor neighbor. The problem in our system is we don't even know who the poor neighbor is anymore, because they're going to the welfare, they're going to the food stamps, they're going to this, so I don't even know who it is that needs help anymore.
Well, and it's even worse than that, by the way. And again, you're absolutely right, but it's even worse than that, because not only are the government itself is viewing charity as competition, and that they will make laws to stop the charities from being able to operate effectively in the community. They set the rules up so it would be better for you to go through government than it would be to go through these private charities, even though it is not better, but they're trying to make it that way. They've set the rules up. They've banned feeding. They've arrested people. I can't even go so far as they've banned it. They've arrested people for feeding homeless.
Right? Yeah, hot dog vendor guy, got arrested. For
not just that. Yeah, they've done this over and over and over again. And the thing is that people don't even recognize that that's going on, because you're right. They have dumbed down society to the point to where this is and people are so frustrated too. Like, that's why, even with the Trump people, I understand the frustration that they have within the system, but I wouldn't elect the guy that's been paying for this system as the guy you'd want to fix the system. You know, it's like, that's the part that really, on both of them, is the part that I can't understand why they're doing what they're doing. But I mean, again, it makes sense. It's a power grab. We got authoritarians up there, and it's the difference between authoritarianism and libertarianism. Libertarians want to leave you alone. Authoritarians want to tell you how to live your life. I mean, which one do you want at this point? And it's looking like the population is not to the point yet where they want to take care of themselves.
So let's transition to that. Obviously, we do have another candidate who's going to hopefully come into the fray here soon. That'll be a Libertarian candidate. What was your thoughts on the Libertarian debate? Who did well, and who do you think will emerge as the candidate there?
Well, overall, I think that they all did very well. I think that all of the candidates did very well. Now, all of the candidates also made mistakes and they made errors. So I want to preface it by saying that any of the guys that were running, either Austin Peterson, McCaffrey, or Gary Johnson, I would support above any of the Democrats or Republicans running. I mean, those three understand it enough to where I would personally support any of them. Now, I don't know if the rest of the population would do that necessarily, but I think that all of them did very, very well. I think Gary was a little bit low energy on some things, and I think that when it came to the cake issue that he talked about, he was just wrong on that. And I think that when it came to the other issue was, I forget now what the other issue was. The gun debate, the gun thing. I actually think that he didn't finish what he was saying, and he showed that he actually has a lot of work to do. If he's going to win this nomination, he's got a lot of work to do when it comes to the general. Like, if he does get in this debate with Clinton and Bush, or Clinton and Trump, I have a hard time even saying Trump, huh? When it comes to this, I do think that he's going to have a lot of work to do. Now, I will say that the debate itself was a very substantive debate, and I think that these guys, you didn't really see any attacks really, other than when Austin Peterson, who's also another one of the candidates, went after Gary on the cake thing and on the gun thing. But Austin did his homework. He knew where Gary was weak, and he went after him on the issues in which Gary was weak. And he phrased his questions in a way in which it really did help him along to score some points. And he did score some points. This is not a given that Gary's going to win this thing, even though right now I would imagine that Gary's going to win the nomination, but it is not a given that Gary's going to win this thing, because these guys have been doing work. Again, we do ours via delegates as well. The only difference is that we go to a convention, and those delegates aren't bound to vote for anybody, and that they nominate the delegates at the convention. Everybody that shows up, you vote on them. The delegates there vote on the people who's going to go be the delegates at the convention. And even most of our alternates will probably get on with other states or something like that. But, our process, while there is some similarities to that because we're a political party, it's a little bit different too. But so I think that he did well. And I also think it highlighted that Gary Johnson is what I would consider to be an economic libertarian. He's also, he's definitely socially liberal. I'm not going to say that he's not. He's definitely socially leave everybody alone and all that kind of stuff. But when he explains libertarianism, he does it in more of a profit and loss, nuts and bolts kind of way, and not an ideological way, which, while it doesn't have its benefit when you're running in a libertarian primary, has a huge benefit when you're running in a general election. So I think out of all the guys on the stage, that Gary will be the one that will be most receptive. And Gary's been a governor. He's been a two-term governor before. And Gary has got a great track record, not only in public office, but he also has a great track record in private industry as well, where he started a construction company, built it to $1 million company, and then sold it off. And, he's got a great personal story that goes along with it. He's a really nice guy. Gary Johnson is probably one of the most humblest, nicest guys that I've ever met. Really, and when it comes to politicians, I've met a lot of them, and most of them are kind of just make you feel like you want to take a shower when you're done. But Gary's not like that. Gary's very personable, very humble, and so I like those things about Gary, but I think that he's got a lot of work to do in order to make sure that he's prepared if he does get in these debates. And I will say this: there's a lawsuit that they're working on to try to get included in the debates. But I actually think that this year he's going to be included because there was a poll that just came out, a Monmouth University poll, that had Gary Johnson. They did Gary Johnson against Trump against Clinton. Gary was at 11%, and what that means is that 4 more percentage points, and depending on the level, the error rate on this, 4 more percentage points, and Gary's in the debates. Like the Commission on Presidential Debates would have to include him in it. We have ballot access in enough states. and he had enough percentage to be in there. Those are the two pieces of criteria that are needed in order to get in the debate. So you may see Gary in these debates, or whoever the Libertarian candidate is, maybe another one of them to get through. I think that right now I've seen enough of all these candidates, and I do think that, you know, Gary would probably end up looking the best on the stage. I love Austin's charisma, though. I love Austin's go-getter attitude. I do think that he did not come off as naturally in that debate as he could have come off, but I think that he did the most research for that debate. I think he came up with the most, good answers on that debate. He did speak in sound bites, which a lot of libertarians found was a negative thing. I actually viewed it as a positive thing because he was able to get his point across. I love that part. And in all honesty, John McAfee, man, if his past wasn't such a factor, that he really was a heart and soul libertarian, and I think that he doesn't get rattled on those stage. And for 70 years old, he looked good. I mean, he really looked. I mean, I can't believe that dude's 70. Like, I think he's lying. You know what I mean? But I mean, he's good though. I mean, and his heart is a libertarian. He's a libertarian at heart. I don't like some of the things that he talks about with some things, but at his heart, he's a libertarian. And so I was really happy overall with the debate. I mean, I have to be a little critiquing because you can't just say, oh no, they were all good, because there were some problems. There were some issues. I didn't like some of the ways that they went around and did it, but it was really good.
I have to say I'm leaning more Peterson, and I really think, Gary's been there, Gary's done that. I'd love to see Gary be able to throw his power and presence behind Peterson. I don't think Peterson's going to be able to kind of maybe make the splash like you were mentioning, to be able to get on the ballot, get in the debate, and those kinds of things for this election. But I think because of his youth, if he can get his criteria, build the grassroots to build it up for next time kind of thing. The problem that I see right now, and again, same thing with McAfee. I really want to see some political power, some money being poured into this, try to get a libertarian candidate on the map. Let's really try to build the kind of grassroots stuff for someone who's really young and energetic like Peterson is, that can really have a future, for 4 years from now especially. I'm not trying to rule, this year out or try to toss it aside like it doesn't count. But at the same time, my concern right now, I tell you where I'm at. I'm at where, and you can go ahead and disagree with me, but I don't see how Trump can hold this together and keep the nomination. Mathematically, it's impossible for him to get to 1237. I mean, obviously, you could say he could get 100% of the delegates. They claim he has to get 60 something. It's just not. I mean, it's just not even mathematically really possible at this point. So we're going to come down to some sort of contested convention. We're probably going to have the two candidates. They'll probably manipulate the rules to come down to the two of them. Because of the ground game, I feel like the delegates will be able to be there for Cruz, and he'll be able to get that number. And that's going to leave Trump more likely to go third party and not just take this well. He's not going to take not winning as a populist candidate well. Don't you agree?
No, I completely agree. I think the only issue that I have with what you said is that I don't know how that he would be able to run a third-party presidential bid at that point in time. I think that the way that the rules are set up around the country is you got to get ballot access. You got to, you're going to have to get on the ballot somehow. And we will have our convention. The only other party that has ballot access in all 50 states is the Libertarian Party.
Sure.
So you got the other ones. I mean, the Green Party's almost mathematically possible that they can actually win an election with the number of states that they have access to, and the Constitution Party is a little bit worse than that, and the Reform Party just, they're just not there.
Well,
they're just not there.
He just runs as an independent. He pulls Ross Perot.
But you still got to get on the ballot, though. And how is he going to do
get
that?
on the ballot. So he'll figure out a way to manipulate the system and spend the money that he needs to take. And everyone's going to want him on the ballots because it's going to be good for ratings. It's going to be good for debates. It's going to be good for all this nonsense and create a triangle, and that will edge out a libertarian. But it will create even more chaos, to me, which would set up the need for a bigger libertarian 4 years from now, if not.
Yeah. Oh no, honestly, that's the case for Austin. By the way, that is the case for Austin, and there is validity to that. Is that Austin is in many ways you could look at Austin Peterson as the future of the party. Is that this is the future of, you have a go-getter professional candidate, knows enough about the media, has been involved in the media for a long time, that he can do okay in that arena. I mean, that Fox Business debate, there's no getting around this, is that the reason that Fox debate happened is because Austin Peterson was so aggressive in getting this done that John Stossel, wanted to see this debate happen, and that Gary initially backed out of doing this debate, and because of the pressure that Austin had put on Gary, is that it forced Gary to actually do this. I mean, I can remember I was very angry when I first found out that this debate wasn't going to happen, and I was making calls along with a lot of other people making calls, and we were calling Gary's people and saying, look, you guys got to do this debate. I don't care if what you think of giving somebody an advantage or not. This will help the party by doing this, and you need to do this.
Absolutely.
And so they finally did it, and in all honesty, it did give Austin an opportunity to shine. I think he did extremely well in that debate, and I think that Gary did okay in that debate. And go back on the Trump thing. The GOP is in probably the worst position that they could possibly be in, along with the Democrats, but I'd edge out the GOP a little bit worse. And the reason why is because Trump is not a person that is going to take this line down.
That's correct.
And he has a big enough of a mouthpiece that he will be able to really hammer these guys. And if he can't get on if he can't win this nomination, he is going to ruin it for whoever does get the nomination. If it's Cruz, and because, look, here's Trump's case, and I can't argue with Trump's case on this. I got the most delegates. Even if I don't get to the majority, I got the most delegates. And you're going to give this, I secured the most votes. So you're going to give this to the guy that I beat, basically, in so many states, instead of giving it to me? And again, if you realize that the rules are, well, it's the delegate count and it's not the popular vote,
right.
Then you're like, okay, well, Trump doesn't really have a case to be made. But that's not how he's going to frame it, and that's not how most people think it's supposed to be.
Well,
so they're in a lot of trouble.
Well, and that's what he's seeing already. He sees the writing on the wall. That's why he's already framing this as a stolen election. That's why he's already framing this. They're stealing delegates from me. It's Gestapo tactics. He's already doing that because his supporters are already going to believe that 100%. The problem that I have is you and I both know how the math played out, right? If we get Trump, we can thank Marco Rubio and John Kasich for it. Because if they had dropped out of the race, we would have had a difference in those first 4 or 5 states. Definitely March 1st would have been different. It wouldn't have changed Florida, but it would have changed a few states. And we actually would see Cruz and Trump almost neck and neck. I mean, just the math is there to show this out. And in fact, Kasich being around is actually just silly. I actually saw a story yesterday that said since Marco Rubio dropped out, it had Cruz at 100 and something delegates and Trump at only like 60. Kasich still hasn't got a delegate. Not a single delegate since Rubio's dropped out. Dude, what are you doing? It's just creating chaos. So yeah,
I think that's what they're doing.
And I think, and again, I have said all along, the key for this to work for Cruz is the margin. Right now, the margin is down to like 198 or whatever it is. He's only behind Trump 198, but he's heading into 6 really bad liberal-leaning states. New Jersey's right behind that. So you figure that's going to be 300. He'd be behind, let's say, 300 or something like that. That's too much. He can't be behind that much. He's got to be able to close that gap. He's got to be within 150 to 200. He can't be behind. He's got to be, I keep saying, he's got to be within the margin of Rubio. The margin of Rubio is the key. You got to be able to be in that if it goes to a second vote. And but you're right. He does not. He isn't taking anything losing well. He's getting slaughtered in states. And he just cries. He's been a little girl going to Twitter and calling people names, and it's just been crazy what's going on with this guy. And he gets a pass.
Oh yeah! Not only does he get a pass, it's that people love it. It's that everything that has been thrown at this guy, where they're like, "Well, that's going to kill him. Well, that's going to kill him. Well, that's going to kill him." None of it has killed him. Now, some of the stuff lately has caused his numbers to kind of wane a little bit, but I think that had more to do with the closing of the ranks within the establishment and their willingness to hold their nose for Ted Cruz, because that's what they're doing right now, is that they're holding their nose for Ted Cruz because they don't like Ted Cruz. And again, obviously it's actually a complimentary thing to Ted Cruz because they don't like him for reasons that, well, that's not such a bad reason to not like the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, an organization, look, his Iowa game is the thing that launched him. His Iowa game launched him, and he knew it. And he brought in people, and I actually know some of the people he brought in that ran that Iowa game. They ran the same game in 12 for Ron Paul. Cruz did it, but did it better. And, he was able to maneuver in a way in which Ron Paul couldn't even have maneuvered. It's really funny that I know that it's now being talked about a little bit, but to see the effect of the Ron Paul campaign, not in ways we would have thought we would have seen, but in ways that we didn't imagine seeing, we're seeing. And it is amazing to watch that, you go back to that Ron Paul 2012 campaign, and people looked at that a lot more than they admitted to.
Well, absolutely. I think there's so much that can be learned from that. And reality is, I got to be honest, why I was caught off guard, I thought some of the rules had been buttoned up. You would have thought with what happened that the establishment people would have buttoned up some of the rules. You know, they're so good at cheating the system to ensure their own power and authority. You would have thought the Louisiana GOP, you would have thought the Arizona GOP would have made changes so this stuff wouldn't happen. Nope, Cruz walked right through the door. And I got to be honest, I'm going to go on a limb with you, Snitker. You'll call me out if I'm wrong anyway. There is a chance that Cruz can win on first ballot. And that's only because if there's enough of these unbound, if enough of this unbound nonsense is actually legitimate, like it truly is Cruz, he could if he can just get close enough, if he can just get very close, he might be right at 1230 to 1240. He might just be right at. Obviously, California probably is the big linchpin in that actually happening. But there's so many. I mean, if you look at the actual data, when you're looking at, it's supposed to be Trump 20, Cruz 12 in Louisiana, and it turns out being 26-6 Cruz. Man, that's a big flip, bro. That's a huge difference.
No, it's definitely possible. I think that the only problem that Cruz had was that this started happening for him later in the game than it should have.
Yeah, and
this comes down to
stayed in too long.
Yeah, but this comes down to the ego part of the establishment part of the GOP.
Oh, yeah.
Is that neither one of these guys were guys that the establishment wanted. It wasn't Cruz, it wasn't Trump. These were the last two guys that they wanted.
Absolutely.
But the problem is that, Jeb Bush was, $100 million, and this guy can't get anything done. Rubio loses his own he lost Florida. I mean, I love the sign that says this was Marco Rubio country, because every time I see that sign, I was like, nope, it ain't, not even close.
Anymore.
Because he got killed. Look, this may, and we'll see the future, we'll see what the future holds. This may have damaged Rubio for not just this election. This may have done permanent damage to Rubio. Now, he might be able to get that back. But I'm telling you, man,
it depends on what he tries to reach for and who he's going up against, because I couldn't agree more, because obviously I think everybody felt if he actually legitimately ran for this office and didn't win, the governorship in Florida was still on the table. But I think now this is called into question depending on who he's running against, because it shows that Floridians have seen through the Marco Rubio charade. He doesn't show up. There's corruption issues. There's financial issues. And, of course, the robotic. I mean, dude's just programmed. He's just like a puppet. So that actually manifested itself. And that's one of the reasons I think people turned off Rubio so quickly, was that meltdown where he repeated himself 6 times.
No, he's the drinking of the water thing and all that other stuff, too.
Yeah. So, well, I think we should wrap up, Snitker. It's always great to chat with you, my friend. You love the Star Wars Rogue One trailer, I hear.
Yeah, no, I love it. Look, on the movie aspect of angles, which I'd love to do a movie one with you after this as well. But on the movie stuff, man, it is amazing what's going on in movies. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of entertainment on TV with politics, but boy, the movies is good too, and they're just not using lightsabers in the Republican and the Democrat debates, and that's kind of unfortunate.
If they wear the cool robes and stuff and helmets, it might be at least a little more entertaining, right?
Oh, God, that would be so fun if they did that. Well, hopefully the next time they do that. Maybe they'll ask the Libertarians to do it next time.
All right, my friend, you take care of yourself. We'll talk soon.
All right, we'll see you.